Hi guys, this is Erica from Gokce Capital.
Now before I begin, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on notifications. Picture this. You are only a few days away from the closing on the sale of your new home. And as you sit down for your morning coffee, you open an email marked urgent from your escrow officer. Your lawyer and real estate agent are copied. The email tells you that you must wire your down payment right away or the closing will be delayed. It gives you the wire details and advises you to complete the wire today if possible. Now you've been living out of your parents' home for the past 7 weeks while you complete the purchase and are eager to finalize the process. Immediately you contact your bank and have the money wired. 2 days later, you get another email from your escrow officer letting you know that the closing is set for the next day and giving you a new set of wire instructions. Confused, you contact your escrow officer and let her know you already sent the down payment. Your officer then tells you that they had not sent any previous instructions. It turns out you have been scammed and your money is gone. This story probably sounds familiar, right? Unfortunately, wire fraud is a growing concern, and you will read many stories like this one online. Although wire fraud is just the latest in a long line of real estate scams, and one of the biggest involved the sale of the Brooklyn Bridge, but more on that later. For now, if you would like to learn more about wire fraud in order to protect yourself, we are going to cover the top things you should know, so keep watching. Number 1. Wire fraud is when a hacker poses as one of the parties in a real estate transaction. They do this in order to convince you, the buyer, to divert your closing costs or down payment into a fraudulent account. Number 2. There are 2 main techniques typically used to complete wire fraud. The first is phishing. Phishing is when a hacker or scammer uses a fake email account or sometimes a phone number or website in order to impersonate someone you trust and get you to provide key information. Now, phishing attacks could target you as the buyer, but they could also be directed at your lawyer, real estate agent, or title company. The other major technique is spoofing. And this is when the scammer mimics your agent or lender's email in order to convince you to wire your funds to their account. The 2 techniques are very similar, and from your perspective as the buyer, there's really no difference. Although technically, phishing is for the purpose of obtaining information, whereas spoofing is the general term used to describe when a scammer tries to mimic a trusted party's email address. Number 3. There are a few ways that you can identify wire fraud. Because the most common tactic is to send you an email with fraudulent closing instructions, one of the most important things you can do is carefully scan all emails that you receive. In most cases, the scammer hasn't actually hacked your escrow officer's email address, so the email address will not be your closing agent's true address. It is usually a fake email address that is designed to look very similar to someone who is merely scanning the email, but it could be off by 1 letter. So thoroughly check the email addresses to make sure they are exactly the same as the known correct email address. The email will also convey a sense of emergency. This is not always the case, but one typical technique is to say that the closing is going to be delayed or canceled if you don't wire funds right away. The email may also include last-minute changes to the closing process that differ from what you have previously agreed to with either your agent, lawyer, or escrow officer. And some of the less sophisticated scammers will also send emails that contain misspelled words. So if you read the email carefully, there are usually clues that it is coming from a scammer. But there are some scammers who have become very sophisticated at making an email look completely legitimate. So a good rule is to always call your escrow officer before sending a wire to confirm that the instructions are correct. And as a note here, make sure that you call your escrow officer from their public number or the number that you have used to speak with them before. Do not use the number listed in the email. Some of the more sophisticated scammers may even have a number in the email and have someone answer it if you should try to call. And finally, if you do happen to become a victim of wire fraud, contact your bank immediately. They can sometimes recall the wire and salvage your funds. Unfortunately, though, you have to catch this almost immediately. There's a very short time window in which a wire can be recalled. You should also file a complaint with the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center. Even if your bank is able to get your funds back, it's important to let the FBI know that fraud has occurred. The Internet Crime Complaint Center will give you an IC3 complaint number, and you can then contact your local FBI field office with this complaint number to open a case. If the bank is not able to get your funds back, they may be able to tell you which account your funds were wired to. You can then contact all recipient banks to see if they can freeze the funds or if they can tell you the information on where the funds went after they received them. And finally, you should also call your local authorities. So those are the top things you should know about wire fraud. But as I mentioned earlier, wire fraud is just one in a long line of real estate scams. And among the most famous of real estate scammers was George Parker, who supposedly sold the Brooklyn Bridge twice a day for 30 years to unsuspecting immigrants. He was eventually caught when a few of his victims tried to set up toll booths on the bridge. And on December 17, 1928, he was convicted and given a life sentence in Sing Sing. And of course, there are millions of other examples. So if you have any stories about wire fraud or real estate fraud in general, let us know in the comments. Did you like this video? You're going to love our Gokce Land Due Diligence program. We'll make you a land due diligence expert in just 7 days. Check it out at gokcecapital.com/glad. And while you're at our website, don't forget to explore our $1 down properties at gokcecapital.com/listings. Finally, don't hesitate to reach out with any questions. You can email, call, or text, and we will respond as soon as possible. So thank you for listening, and more to come.